we're doing it for, to help our pupils learn English in a motivating, interesting way, and hoping that by helping them, they will become better speakers of English. And the two pupils we brought are actually very good. And they're a little bit nervous, but I told them to be, because what they are going to tell you is an interesting story. Marija Dragutinovic is the teacher of English of the OSG West Friesland. She's going to tell you a little bit more about their school. And the two pupils we brought is Tara and Ilse. And of course they have a very nice stay here in some host families of a Spanish school of Antonio. And their hope during the stay here and enjoying the company and telling exactly why we all should deliver task-based language learning in our schools. Marija.
So we're going to be talking about working with language tasks on school trips, but also how to use student feedback on improving tasks. And first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about our school and why we go on school trips. Because we've been going on school trips ever since I was a student, way back. And school trips used to be just be fun. We went to London or Berlin, had some fun with your classmates, and we went back home. We didn't really learn that much. And about 9 years ago, 10 years ago, our school decided that we would start a special program which is called Fast Lane English. I'm not a techie, so. And which means that you have 2 hours of extra English a week where you don't focus on grammar and on your final exams, but you focus on English language and culture in like the broadest sense. Now, for me as a teacher, that means that I have a lot of freedom to use tasks in my lessons, but we go on a school trip every year with them. So the program's 4 years and we go to England every single year, but we thought it would be valuable to increase the educational value of a school trip. So not just going on a trip and have fun with your classmates, but also to visit certain locations and to actually have students learn something. Yes, Frederica?
Could you switch off?
Yeah? Yeah, would you prefer?
We heard it much better.
When it was off, okay. Back on. I hope it's on now. It's apparently a very intricate device. Yes. Okay, it's on now, right? Yeah. It's a little bit difficult for me to hear whether it's on or off. Anyway, so creating tasks for a school trip is a little different from just creating a task to be used in your classroom, because you are sometimes creating a task for a specific location that you have never visited yourself, which is challenging. But we also do it from a more CLIL-based idea in order to use other subjects and combine that with English for us being the target language. So subjects like history, geography, and biology, for instance. And, well, there are a number of advantages for me as a teacher, which means that when we go to certain locations, to a museum, or we take, for instance, when we go to Scotland, we take a hike, but because you work with a language task, with an actual communicative goal, it does add meaning to the locations that you visit. And for us, we have the idea that students are actually more engaged with the location that they visit. They don't just look around the museum and then leave again after 15 minutes. They really do have a specific task of researching certain items in a museum, for instance. When a task is performed seriously, they do gain a more in-depth knowledge of the location they are visiting. Students are usually very motivated to perform a task because they want to do well. And in a lot of cases, in most cases, students are forced to use the target language because if you create your task in such a way, they will have to talk to, for instance, people working in the museum in order to find out information about a work of art. Having said that, there are, of course, a number of challenges and some points of improvement, which means that designing a really good task takes time. But if you know this, you can start well in advance. And as I said, designing a task for a location you haven't visited before is challenging, but it also means that once you visited the location and you visit it again the year after, you can always kind of fine-tune your task. So it doesn't really matter whether you've never visited a location before, you can always adapt and change a task as you go along. One of the biggest challenges with any group work, of course, is that when you work with larger groups, and our groups, when we're on trips, are usually 11 to 12 students, there are usually 4 students who do most of the work, and the others who kind of, watch as they go, but they're not very active. So you need to somehow create and design your task in such a way that everyone is forced to be active in certain elements of a task. When you want students to use a location, for instance, to actually talk to the people who work in a museum, for instance, or in our case, in a castle, having them have smartphones is sometimes a hindrance because they can just Google everything. That kind of takes away, some communicative goal because they don't actually engage with the users of the language. We're going to show you an example of a task that we were given by the British tandem that works in the project with us. And I'll ask Tara and Ilse to give you a copy of the task itself while I kind of summarize the task. The task itself is preparing a trip to Edinburgh. So for students to research the city while they are still at home, and then to present the city to their classmates. Now, because we were given the task about a week before we were meant to leave on our trip to Edinburgh, we didn't have enough time to have the kids use it as a preparatory task, and we thought we could change it into a more CLIL-based task, and they would perform it on the trip themselves. So we took some iPads from school with us on the trip, and every group was given an iPad. And we had them make a film of their 3 days in Edinburgh, and eventually they had to make a 25-minute film, sticking to the format of a Dutch television show, which is like a travel program, 3 op reis. And that usually features 2 people who go from country to country and they present the country. So our students had to use that format and present the city of Edinburgh. Now that in itself gives the students a lot of freedom, and that can go really well, but it can also go very wrong. So what we had them do is, within the larger task of creating a film, we had subtasks of them visiting certain specific locations, like Edinburgh Castle, the Scottish National Museum, and for every location, we had them research certain areas of the castle, for instance, and present that. And they were given a lot of freedom into the ways of presenting. They could choose to give a proper presentation. They were given an option of creating a mini play if they wanted to. Any creative way they could find, as long as it focused on a location and it was informative. Eventually, a lot of creative films were handed in, and these 2 girls belong to the group that created the winning film, and I would like to show you the results of their trip, and to kind of see how the product of the task was eventually handed in. Let me see if I can find it. I hope I have sound for the film. Let me see. Where?
I'm standing here in Edinburgh in front of the Walter Scott monument. The monument was built in the Gothic style because the Gothic style referred to a story-wise telling of their lives. The Gothic style is more a story, fairy tale kind of style, and back in the days they quite liked the story tale thingies. You can see that Walter Scott was a nationalist because why would the Scots build such a monument for just a rider? I mean, most people wouldn't actually build this kind of monument for just a rider. He was a nationalist, quite a good one, and you can see that in the poem actually. The second sentence is, who never to himself had said, this is my own, my native land. I think that's quite good. The connection between the French Revolution and Napoleon and Walter Scott is that because of Napoleon and the French Revolution, Walter Scott was like triggered to start writing, and that's why he decided to start writing, and that's all I can tell about Walter Scott.
We're going to interview the Scottish. How is it to play the bagpipe? What's it like?
What's it like? It's difficult. Yeah, it takes a lot of practice, years of practice to get it.
Yeah. And a beginner, can he get a note out of the bagpipe? No.
It take at least 6 months before you even get before you even get onto these. You start off in the practice chapter. You need to learn how to play the notes before you can actually go onto the bagpipes. So you start off with just this piece, and then you move on. You can actually add on different sections.
And how long have you been playing bagpipe?
Well, I was 30 yesterday, so I started when I was 7, so about 23 years. 23 years.
Are you playing a parade?
I don't play with a band at the moment, but yeah, we used to do parades and all that kind of stuff, gala days and all sorts of different parades,
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good day,
Yeah.
You're
National Gallery. We're here in the National Art Gallery of Edinburgh. And you can see a lot of paintings of Henry Webern. He was a very important painter of Scotland. He painted a lot of important Scots because his inspiration was Rembrandt from the Netherlands, and he was very important in the 17th century for us, in our golden century. And Webern wanted to make Scotland very important in the 19th century. So that's why his inspiration was Rembrandt, because he wanted a golden century for Scotland.
For are here for Robert Burns, one of the most important Scottish writers for the Scottish Enlightenment. His memorial is right over there. But I want to show you David Hume. He was one of his best friends and he was just as important for Scotland. He lies here. Let's take a look. Here lies David Hume, one of the most famous Scottish philosophers of his time. He is one of the most skeptic philosophers who I know, and one of the philosophers I think that has really a point.
We are here in Edinburgh, the natural habitat of the Scots. We are going to observe them and maybe even take selfies with them. We are going to feed the Scots. Whatever you do, don't try this at home. This is fake fun. Now we have to run! We have to run!
The writer of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He was a good man and a respected man, but he ends up on the gallows he designed himself. But why? He was a thief and a gambler at night. That resembles his stories that every person has two sides. In the time of the industrial society, people started questioning the religion, and after that, they also started questioning the moral. That's why he wrote a story about a conflicted man.
The most breaking heights succeeded, igniting in the bones, deadly nausea, and a horror of the spirit that cannot be exceeded at the hour of birth or death. And then, these agony began swiftly to subside, and I came to myself as if out of a great sickness. There was something strange in my sensations, something indescribably sweet. I felt younger, lighter, happier in my body. Within, I was conscious of a heavy current of disordered sensual images running like a mill race in my fancy, a solution of the bonds of obligation, an unknown but innocent freedom of the soul. I knew myself, at the first breath of this new life, to be more wicked, that tenfold more wicked, sold a slave to my original evil, and he thought, in that moment, raised and delighted me like wine.
Where this heart lies used to be a toll, and later on a prison. People would, to show their contempt with the authority, taxes and prisons, spit on the heart, and they still do.
At the Writers' Museum, dedicated to Burns, Scott and Stevenson, but I'm gonna tell about Burns. By the time Burns was born, Scotland experienced a golden age of the 18th century. When he started writing, he revived the interest of Scottish literature.
We found some Scots that fit our critics, and we're going to try to give them this. And don't run away this time. But I'll have to run away, probably. It's very scary. This is fake fun. Okay, stay close now. It's very dangerous. We have been spotted. You really don't want... Okay, don't make sudden movements. Okay, now just walk away. Walk away now.
Christianity was first introduced into Scotland by St. Enian. It became an important religion. Christians showed their belief through the objects they owned and the jewelry they wore. What kind of object is this one here?
This is believed to be the shrine of St. Columba, who brought Christianity to the west of Scotland. It is believed that it has been carried before Rupert the Bruce's army defeated the invading English at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1340.
Okay. This is Bonnie Prince Charlie. He was the leader of the Jacobite rebellion. He was French and thereby Catholic. There has also been a fight between the Catholic Highlands and the Protestant Lowlands in Scotland. But his plan was to make entire Scotland Catholic again. But he didn't succeed. He was beaten within 40 minutes in the Battle of Culloden.
During the Industrial Revolution, Scotland faced many different problems like social conflicts and drunkenness. And even though not everyone went to church, they did use the church Bible for personal guidelines. This was reflected on these kind of artifacts that they kept in their houses.
I hope you liked this episode of The Journey in Edinburgh. I'm now going to Nando's, the natural habitat of the obese Scots. See you next time.
Okay, so Bart didn't manage to... kind of based this inside joke on a Dutch biologist who has a separate program. So for our students, that was like an extra kind of layer of humor. But of course, after we did this task on the trip, we had our own experiences as teachers to improve on the task. But of course, we wanted to find out what our students thought of the task and what their experience was, so that we could take that into account as well to further improve on it. So I'm now going to give the word to Ilse and Tara, who are going to share with you their experiences and their views on working with this task on the trip.
Yes, hi, I'm Sarah. And we thought the task in Edinburgh had a lot of good points in our learning experience in Edinburgh itself. I think one of the most important factors was that we got to talk to a lot of locals in Scotland itself, since, like Mrs. Dragutinovic mentioned before, in things like in the museum, where we had to learn more about things as the paintings, but also when we wanted to sing the song Auld Lang Syne, we had to gather around a lot of people who would want to sing the song with us, and you start to get a conversation with people. And I think that's one of the main goals for a trip like this to foreign countries, to speak English with actual native speakers. And also the fact that we had a lot of freedom in this task. We got to see a lot of things we normally wouldn't see. When you book a normal tour guide to a city like Edinburgh, you have these strict times. You have to be at a certain place. And here we had a lot of freedom. For example, we visited the grave of David Hume. It's the famous Scottish philosopher. And he wasn't mentioned in the assignment, but a lot of us in our group have philosophy at school. So we recognized him on a sign at the cemetery. So we thought, hey, we can look at that and we can find out more about him. Some points of improvements were probably that we didn't really learn anything about iMovie or how to edit videos beforehand. we were lucky enough to have 2 people in our group who were really skilled with this program, but a lot of the other groups didn't have this. But our school fixed this with the next group who went to Scotland last week. And before they went to Scotland, they had lessons at school about how to use iMovie and how to think about what to do with things as the sound, because sometimes now people were hard to understand in our movie. So, yeah.
One huge pro was that because you have so much space to do your own thing, you can put a lot of personality and your own character in what you are handing in and putting in your film. So that was a huge motivational boost for me to do the assignment. And I think that's really important if you do an assignment. Some cons were that maybe you've noticed that the audio in our movie was sometimes really bad because of the traffic and other background noises. But that's not really something that you can improve, or you maybe have to take a microphone with you, but I don't think that's really possible. And also the editing. Well, the amount of time that you speak in the movie was very equally divided, but the editing was left to only 2 or 3 people, because it's not really possible to sit around an iPad with 8 people and all try to edit the same video. So that was not really equally divided, but overall I thought this assignment was a lot of fun to do. That's also really important. And in the process of making it, we really made a huge progress in talking to strangers, to native speakers, and improving your English and using your English to make this assignment. I don't know if there are any questions. Yeah?
Yeah, Lucia?
Oh, do you
Yeah, you want the microphone?
I really envy you, Marija, and your students, because I also put this task into practice, but in a different perspective. John, the designer of the task, went to Portugal, and we have prepared the tasks in the perspective of planning it. So I've divided the class into groups, and the students had to think of a way of getting to Edinburgh. What flight would they take? What hotel would they stay in? What monuments they would visit? And I'm going to present one of the results from this task, but in a different perspective. By the end of the task, when they performed it, they really wanted to go to Edinburgh, but unfortunately, Portugal is... it's very difficult to get there.
But now that they know what they want to visit, they can do so when they have money themselves.
If you can pass me your video, I would show it to my students, and I'm sure they would be delighted to watch it.
We'll probably create a YouTube channel for a lot of the video materials that we have, because we have at least this film from last year, and because we now gave the students 1 or 2 lessons on how to use iMovie effectively and how to edit the film, the quality of the films this year is higher. So we have a lot of films from this year as well, so I'll put them on the YouTube channel, you can access them.
What I could do with my students is use the video and edit it, adding the subtitles.
Yeah, absolutely. So
they
you
would
combine
die
another
of
task.
envy, but at least they would see the places they were working on.
Yeah.
And okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Maybe also regarding about not being able to go to a foreign country, you could also really easily do a task like this in your hometown, but not for yourself as a tour, but you can give the tour to others, and you can still look at interesting equations and everything. So, yes.
Frederik has a question as well.
Do you think it has actually improved your English doing these tasks?
Yes, I do, mainly because she talked to so many people to both gather information and to organize an interview or to gather people to sing with you. You have to actually speak English with people who can't speak your own language to you. So if you don't know a word or anything, you can just say it in Dutch, but you have to try and form it in English.
Also, when you usually go on school trips, you go to a museum and book a tour guide, and then you listen for like an hour to what he is saying, and usually the information that I get goes in one ear and out the other. And now when you have to present it to other people, then you process the information that you get in such a different way than when you only listen to it. So that's also a huge pro. Any other questions?
Hans, you had a question?
Well, actually, I think their English is outstanding. Yeah. So better than mine, probably. I wonder. I think you're both very clever girls. I wonder if these kind of projects. I think maybe you would have spoken English on the level you do, even without a project. Do you think that's true?
Well, maybe we would have in the host families and such, but I know a lot of people in our class would, if you hadn't had a task and you've got free time, you would just stay in the city center because you're afraid of getting lost or you're scared to talk to people, so you just go shopping or something. But now with a task like this, you really go out there because you have to, and you get time from school for the task. But we even went in our free time for a couple hours to keep talking to people and keep making our video longer. So I think it helps to motivate a lot of people because you want to make a good video, you want to do good.
I don't know how your school's departments work together, but how do you see maybe this working for collaboration with, say, the history department, the media department, arts department? Do you think you could somehow combine this task with, I suppose, other lessons?
Yeah, we have, and we did, because we further adapted the task. It's now the assignment is now to create a film of the entire Scotland trip, because we're not just in Edinburgh, we go to the Highlands as well. But everywhere we go, they get an assignment book, and for each location they're given information. For instance, if they have a geography assignment, one of my geography teachers writes an assignment for them. I then translate that into English. And the same goes for the history teacher, and because it's not just English teachers who go on the trip with the kids, it's also colleagues from the history and geography department, from the biology department, who can then also teach them or give them information on the location, and they can then use that information and integrate that into their film. So that's how you kind of combine these subjects, yeah. Any more questions? Yeah, Lucia?
Do you take the same students every year or different groups of students?
It's always the fourth year group.
Okay.
So these girls are now fifth year group, so we've taken the fourth year group of this year, and then, but it's always the same school year, but it's different students, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Because we're kind of pressed for time, what I've done is, what I've created is a template, if you're interested, because I'm afraid we can't do this together now, that if you are going on a school trip and you think, okay, but I really would like to try this, the template might help you kind of add some more depth and some more educational value to your visit. It has some very practical hints in here. So I'll ask the girls to hand them out. Yes. And then I think I'm going to give the microphone to Bessie. Yeah. Exactly. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope we've given you some ideas.